Okay. All right. My name is Julianne Shover. I'm Director of the Center for Asian Research and very happy to welcome all of you in the room here today. Those of you who have signed in from ASU, but also a number of you who have signed in from beyond our campus. So welcome to today's talk. We're extremely happy to welcome Professor Faheem Hussain. And before we start, I want to just direct your attention to a few things that are upcoming in the center's program. If you want to know more details, please go to our website at asiastudies@asu.edu. We have a FLOSS information session coming up for students interested in applying for that fellowship, as well as a career opportunities abroad session for those who are nearing graduation and thinking about doing work in the international context. Today's topic deals with, and then also I forgot, on December 3rd, we have Bryce Beamer, a historian of Southeast Asia, speaking on issues having to do with slavery in pre-modern Southeast Asia. Today's topic, also focused on the border of Southeast Asia and South Asia, is the focus on the Rohingya refugee camp on the border of Bangladesh and Myanmar. And I just wanted to say a few words about Professor Faheem Hussain, who is in the School for the Future of Innovation and Society, where he chairs an MA degree in global technology and development programs. His expertise is in public policy, information and communication technology, and international development. He has worked in many international contexts around the world on issues of diversity, sustainable development, refugee research, and women's empowerment. Welcome so much today. We're so happy to have you, Professor Hussain.
Thank you so much. First, can we confirm that all in the Zoom can hear me? Anybody can do that? So,
yes, we can. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for confirming it. And thank you so much for actually having me here. It's been an honor, and we have been talking about to gather and collaborate and exchange ideas for some time. Then, of course, COVID happened, and it kind of stopped our in-person conversations. But I'm glad to be here. More importantly, I'm glad to be here and talking without a mask. So that's and there are some real people in front of me. That's amazing as well. So, and today the struggle would be for me to talk less because the topic that I will be covering, or the issues that I will be touching on are so close to my heart in terms of the issues, the struggles, the aspirations, and so many other things. What I will try to do is give you some stories, give you some backgrounds, and also will tell you at the macro level what is this all about, and maybe some of the key research initiatives that I've been part of. But more importantly, the main reason for me to have this conversation with this group is to actually open up opportunities for further dialogue. It can be related with the Rohingyas, it can be related with any other things, related with displacement, innovation, development, and so many other stuff. So we won't be affected by COVID-19 as we have been through much worse. So whenever I go to this biggest refugee camp in the world, in the border of Myanmar and Bangladesh, I meet people, real people, both from the host communities and from the Rohingya communities. And there are so many strong feelings. So when I was there, I just came back like a couple of weeks ago. I was there after 2 years, and it's so changed in terms of infrastructure, in terms of people's mobility, in terms of what are the things that have been offered to them, and what are the things they are being deprived of. And so when this COVID thing happens and I was in all my masks, double vaccinated, in a place where vaccination is, of course, a conversation far off. COVID is a conversation far off. And I was very much fortunate, thanks to my local partners, Young Power and Social things going on there, IPSA, Young Power and Social Action, based in Chittagong. They've been amazing in terms of giving me this opportunity to collect data and interact with people there. So I had several focus groups and in-person interviews, maintaining social distancing, but it was a humbling experience, let's put it in a way. So let's talk about it from that angle. So before I start formally, I would like to acknowledge that Arizona State University's 4 campuses are located in the Salt River Valley on the ancestral territories of the indigenous peoples, including the Akimal Otham and Peeposh Indian communities, whose care and keeping of these lands allow us to be here today. And this kind of acknowledgement is also needed for all over, wherever we are talking about indigenous communities, native peoples, and to recognize their rights and their aspirations in the way that it should be done long before. So my talk is about hope. When we talk about people in compromised situation, vulnerable people, people in the marginalized communities, of course we can talk about the challenges. We will be talking about the challenges. But at the same time, it's so amazing and so refreshing to see hope. Not just for us who are actually on the other side of the fence, who are much privileged, but hope among the people who are suffering. And this is one of the key themes that keeps me going since 2017, when they first, the bigger chunk first started coming in, escaping the ethnic cleansing from Myanmar. So this young girl, she was smiling at me in front of a learning center in Kutupalong refugee camp. It was taken in 2019. All the images that I will be using, majority of them are taken by my research team with proper consent and through IRB. Just wanted to let you know. And the other images which I have not taken has been cleared with the copyright issues. So some of the questions, if we can start working on, is how can you educate your future generations when your language does not have alphabets? How do you communicate with others when you are legally not allowed to have mobile phones? Not as non-citizen in your own country, not as unrecognized refugees in another country. And how do you combat COVID-19 in a densely populated refugee camp with no running water, no vaccines, and of course, curtailed freedom of movement? So these are some of the bigger questions among the many other questions that I start looking into things. So very, very quickly, Rohingya refugee crisis as a glance. When we talk about it, they have been crossing borders. They have been persecuted since late 70s or early 80s, since especially after their citizens' rights was revoked with the new constitution during that time. They have been actually pouring in the border of Bangladesh. But in 2017, as we all know, there had been some pre-planned ethnic cleansing. And if you see this image, it's such a strong one. It's in the border. The river demarcates 2 countries. This is the Naf River. On the backside, you see the smoke. These are the villages, the Rohingya villages. And the people who are actually jumping out of the boat are the villagers. On the other side, where the smoke you are seeing are the Myanmar Army or the paramilitary or some other local armed groups with machetes, with guns. If you stay there, you will be killed. So the only way they could survive is to leave their own country. And then you see this biggest refugee camp in the world. Imagine this as lush green without anybody. That was the case until August of 2017. So in the border, it's kind of like a place where you have reserve forests and national parks. And then they came in, all the trees were cut down, hills were cut down, and then we have this, this infrastructure. Right now, it's kind of dated information. We are actually around 1.5 million refugees we're looking into. You see on the right side of it, it's in the border of Myanmar and Bangladesh. And the deep blue one is actually the coastline with the Bay of Bengal. And it's located, the camps are located in a very interesting place. Why interesting? It's just a couple of hours away from the longest unbroken sea beach of the world, kind of like 100 kilometers. So what happens, we also see it's near the tourist hub of the country or the region. It is important, I'll come back to that later. And of course, in the demography is also important when we are talking about the struggles and aspirations. 55%, now I think the number is higher, are children. Majority of them are women. And then we also have an increasing number of senior citizens and people with physical and mental challenges and disabilities. So life in the Rohingya camps, as we can see, the upper two pictures were taken in 2017 when they were pouring in. I was there in November. The mid one, I already introduced her to you guys. And the lower one on the bottom right, you see a kid, he was 8 years old in early 2020 when I took the picture. He is part of this thriving underground economy, informal economy, where he's helping out his family by selling things. On the left side, we will come to it, hopefully if we have time, are the Bangladeshi women health workers in WFSE's women-friendly space. So these are the spaces where Rohingya women are more than welcome to come. It's more like a shelter, it's more like a training centers, it's more like a counseling centers, and so many other things. It's the refuge. In their own word, they call it Shantikhana, which means the place of peace. So that's something very fascinating. And you see these women, they have been very much helpful. All of them are there, like the community leaders in their own right, and they are actually having a tremendous positive impact on changing the perception about how women should be out there working for the Rohingya women. So it was very interesting dynamics there. Hopefully we'll have time to look into it. But more from my original research point of view so what am I as an intellectual is always a confusing question for me. My identity, I'm always like suffering from imposter syndrome. So, but what I'm always fascinated is to look into the digital innovations or information technologies and to see how it interacts with us. Maybe it's something positive, maybe something negative, maybe something very different. Imagine the metaverse as it was introduced yesterday, how it's going to impact our life. So it's a very interesting and intermingling stuff. If that's the case, then imagine the most disconnected and one of the most persecuted population in the world, then how are you interacting that? How the digital innovations are being played its part. And remember, Rohingyas are the first, the biggest population who have been persecuted using social media. And imagine it was like time to cut the tall trees. That was the radio message for the Tutsis, for killing the Tutsis. So we saw, and it's been documented, that there had been Facebook and WhatsApp groups to actually attack the Rohingya population with hashtags and so many other things. And as we know, the social media giants failed miserably to save these people. But very quickly, if we look into what has been the case when we talk about these innovations, aspirations, challenges, what we are looking here is some of the analog, traditional solutions. The left side, this guy is actually a community leader of the Rohingyas called Majis, and he is maintaining the records of his community using a ledger, traditional ledger. On the top, the mobile phone, which is a feature phone, non-smartphone, it has two SIMs. One is from Myanmar, the other is from Bangladesh. It was in 2017 when I took the picture, because the network, you can find both, and they still have people on the other side of the border. So the communications were there. And it was also important for their survival, like who is coming, when they're coming, or when to cross the border, things like that. On the bottom right is an amazing, it's a picture of an amazing network. So this is a makeshift mosque. And on top, you see these speakers, right? So this is the most reliable, according to the Rohingyas' perceptions, the most reliable or dependable public service announcement system in the whole camp. So when they are listening something from the networks, this kind of mosque, they actually trust it more. We have found it time and again. And during my times there, several times, what we saw is one of the most important messages from there, unfortunately, is about lost children. And women trafficking and child trafficking is a huge issue in that camp. And as I said, 55% during that time was children, many of them are orphans. So when you listen to something from there, you trust, and then it's reliable, you go. So we are talking about dependency on localized messaging. But then what really kind of excited me is to see the innovation taken to the next level. Imagine in this camp, there is no official internet connections. The mobile phone connections are also horrible. We talk about 3G, 4G, forget about those. Even the traditional text-based, like voice-based things are also very rare. So when we talk about it, and imagine the other stuff, that Rohingyas do not have alphabets. So that was one of the other bummer, like, wow, how can you even? So the oppression was so high that the state building was not there. And so there's no standardized Rohingya, these alphabets, set of alphabets. There are competing ones, but there are no standardized ones. So then they are very much depending on the voice, audio-visual communication. So how you do this, how you communicate, how you entertain yourself when you do not have the means to do it. So this is where these innovations come into place. Very quickly, I'll come back to the other images. So these are the hubs. Imagine our internet. It's collection of thousands of servers, right? And in the servers, we have so much data. We have data about sports, universities, education, entertainment, blah, blah, blah. So these laptops, if you look into this, these are actually hub of information. And these information are downloaded outside the camp. They have this. So my research team, we already mapped out all our, the life cycle of information within the camp area and outside, who are the key stakeholders. And what we have seen, they download information, they download entertainment, and then they pass it on to these laptops. Now, how do you actually decide what to download? It's completely a market force. Oriented stuff. Based on the demand, the supply actually agrees to it. So if there are certain bootleg movies which are on demand, Fast and Furious and whatnot, they will be able to download it and come. The other fascinating thing is their pricing. The pricing is market regulated, and you cannot actually underprice. There is no monopoly. So it's more like decided. We have talked with so many of these young entrepreneurs, digital entrepreneurs, imagine in a most disconnected community. And so you sell it with this, thumb drives. 5 GB is like $1 or something like that. And then you have those things. But why it's internet? Because it's just not entertainment. It's education. The contents are there. Then entertainment about like Bollywood movies, Hollywood movies, so many other things. Then you also have, extremist videos. You also have adult entertainment. You also have religious sermons, all in different folders. So of course, it's like a fascinating way of looking into it, of how they're doing things. What change I saw in the last 3 years is the growing demand and the emergence of locally developed, like camp developed content, which was never there in 2017, 2018. So that is something that really also shows their aspiration to talk, their aspiration to communicate their own messages. So that was there. Then also the repair shop has been an amazing thing. You see on the top left, this is a mobile repair shop. Again, the pricing of each repairing is kind of market regulated. And on the right, this is a charging station. These are the charging stations with, because there's no grid electricity there. And they have this manual two-way authentication system to make sure that it's your phone that you are given to me and it's fully charged, and then you can giving back to me again. So it was so nice to see some of the real world applications that we don't need our fancy, push-pull options to authenticate ourselves. But life goes on. The interesting example for that can be, if you look a bit more deeply on the top right of the bottom image, you see a stack of papers like A4 and others, and you see some cards. These charging stations are also, they have their value-added service to print birthday cards, wedding cards, and so many other things. So we are talking about a life that is going on, even with all the challenges they have. So, and this is earning money. And this is not something some donor told them to do, or some humanitarian agencies told them to do. It kind of happened organically. This is one of my most favorite pictures. And this is where I think Juliana and I were briefly talking about women's empowerment in the Asean region or that part of the world. So this was a Shanti Khana, or a women-friendly space, that we bumped into in 2019. We were there to have conversations and have an understanding of what's going on. If you see the back side of the room, you will see the sewing machines, right? And on the back of the room, you will see some clothes being made. So what is the traditional way? Women, they do not have so-called, quote unquote empowerment. Let's actually tell them how to make clothes. They can earn money, blah, blah, blah. You see on the back, there is this woman. She's like really, really bored of this thing, and she's kind of taking risks. But what are the other people doing? You know what they did? And it happened totally initiated by them. They kind of forced their instructors to say, like, you know what? We need to learn how to repair mobile phones. And they were like, why? Because of two things. One is, remember the repair shops and the recharging shops and the other things? The women are not accepted or expected to be in the marketplace. But there's a huge demand of them using the phones. So they want to be self-reliant, but at the same time, because there's a huge demand, they also can earn money. So you are talking about STEM education, you are talking about entrepreneurship, you are talking about people having taking first step towards their agency. And they're doing it by themselves. It was not, again, prescribed by any, saviors from outside. So, and you see one of the participants have her baby on a lap while she's doing this. To me, it's such a strong message of like taking matter in your own hands in a positive way. The other thing, when we talk about internet and Rohingyas, it was so fascinating. I ran several workshops there over the years on their ideas and aspirations about internet and connectivity. Now, remember, we talked about it. Rohingyas are the first one being persecuted massively using internet. So what is their ideas about social media platforms, and so many other things? So there are two extremes that happened. When we were talking to the women about what is your hope about very good internet in your future, I won't ever forget this. One of these ladies told me that I would like to see in my future, a good use of internet should be that I will be at my home. Imagine a refugee is talking about being in a home. I will be at my home and I will be able to track down the guys who are actually messing with, disturbing my girls over phone. I was like, so your girls are being harassed over phone now? Like, yes. So there are huge cases of cyberbullying, revenge porn, and women trafficking using phones in the camp areas. Now imagine, the stories are, we talked about it, irrespective of who are you talking to, women having phone is a bad idea because then they get, trafficked. So women should not have phone. Or women, if they have phone, I saw some of the young women volunteers from Rohingya communities, their phone, like inboxes, not the inboxes, the contact list have 3 numbers. It's heavily regulated by their families. The supervisor's number, their husband's number, and their brother's number. So you see the level of patriarchy or the clergies when it comes to controlling or trying to control people's agency. The other one was, I had one of my several conversations, I was talking to this local clergy, like the leader, and he was saying that, yeah, women can talk over phone, but they should not use phone. I was like, wow. So then you were kind of defining what level of aspirations and things are there. So things are not definitely 0 and 1 when it comes to this. So beyond the access to information, the other things we are also doing, part of this big grant of creating hope in conflict, a grand challenge grant, which we got from like a couple of years ago with my collaboration with my colleagues in SUNY Korea and also our Young Power in Social Action. So what we are doing here, it has been like, imagine you are trying to do a field research and applications and innovations during COVID, where you won't be able to be in the field. So it has been a struggle, huge struggle from our side, from the local partner side, and definitely the recipients of the Rohingya side. So what we have been trying to do, imagine we talked about many of the Rohingyas are physically disabled. So what we have been trying to see whether we can cut the middleman in terms of designing crutch shoes. Because these crutches are like, sold in pairs. And if shoes are gone, you have to chuck it out, both the pairs. It really doesn't matter. So it's a very costly proposition. So what we're thinking is like if we have our designs there based on their feedback, we can customize the design, 3D print it, and then make them use it. And so that is the thing. If on the bottom right, you see this is our crutch shoes that we are sampling right now. And based on some of our respondents from on the left side, intentionally, we're not like showing their faces. And on the top, we are with our local partners and the 3D printer. That has been itself and altogether a struggle. Having a 3D printer, then how you can place it in the camp or not, and what you do it, people do not have the understanding of it. So, but it's been an interesting journey. The other side of hope is the education system of the Rohingyas right now when we are talking about like in the camp areas. And imagine, I mentioned it twice before, Rohingyas do not have official languages, right? And when they were persecuted in Myanmar, they were persecuted so the word Rohingya is banned in Myanmar, right? So you can't say Bengalis. But Bengalis are actually the people from Bangladesh and West Bengal and some other parts of India. So Bengali is an ethnicity. So, but when you are using Bengali, they're using it more of as a derogatory word. And they are also using the word Kalar, K-A-L-A-R, which is kind of like N-word equivalent here in our place. So why I'm saying this? When it comes to education, they have been systematically ostracized, discriminated, bypassed. So they did not, majority, say 99% of the Rohingyas we bumped into the camps, they did not pass beyond grade 10. And among those 99%, 99% are male, because women are definitely at risk if you are going out of the school, or going out for the school, accessing the schools. And then again, the patriarchy is there. So the whole protection, so-called protection of women comes from literally protecting them from the harm's way, because there are systematic rape camps and so many other things that has been against women. Violence against women has been one of the most commonly used things all over the world for conflict. For the Rohingyas, it was definitely the case. So why then we are talking about education? So imagine Rohingyas in their own country did not have enough education. Coming to the Bangladesh, majority of the Rohingyas are now living in Bangladesh as, displaced population, what kind of education they should have and why they should have education. What are they going to do with the education, right? So that's one of the things that really hit me to the core. Because education is for, okay, I get a job, I do something, I learn to do things, and I'm allowed to do stuff. What are you going to do with the education that really doesn't add value because you're not allowed to work in the place where you are, you're not allowed to go back to the place where you belong to, and then what are you doing? And then comes the most interesting part. In the camp areas, they are only allowed to have education in either Burmese or in English. So what I joke around is the languages of the oppressors anyway. So because if they wanted to learn Bangla, but the problem is then the host community also have justification. The moment they are officially learning Bangla, the Burmese government will say, aha, these are Bengalis. So we told you so. So of course we are not going to do this. Then come COVID. And it was the excuse to actually shut down all the whatever learning centers they were there in the camps. So for the year and a half or more, we are not seeing any official conversations or organizations of the learning centers within the camp areas. Then what is this underground education network? So this is the thing, mainly thanks to one of my colleagues, she's collaborating me with on this. What we found out is they are actually having this underground network of schools where they are using the syllabus, the curriculum from Myanmar. They're, guess what? They're smuggling it from the other side of the border using, and this is where it becomes so interesting, using some of the same drug trafficking network. So instead of the drugs, or maybe including the drugs, they're piggybacking the education materials. How awesome is that? So of course, I'm not saying that, I'm not supporting the drug trade anyway, but imagine this, the need of people, the demand of people, and then how innovative you can be when you are talking about the supply. And then it comes to the Bangladesh side, it goes outside the camp because the camps do not have printing presses. They print out things and they have market rates. If you see grade 2, grade 5, grade 3, grade 9, based on the topic, based on the demand of the topic, English is definitely very popular. Math is very popular. Based on this, they have actually market rates for each lessons. So there is a market economy in place as well, in addition to the underground nation building. So when we talk about hope, this is also part of it. Educating your future generations in such a challenged environment. Fast forward this COVID thing that comes in, and of course the disconnection is there. It's all related. You do not have alphabets, how you communicate, you have these things in your own. You do not have running water, you do not have vaccinations. It's one of the most densely populated refugee camps. So how are you going to have those so-called social distancing? So what we have seen, I've been working with also Rohingya Students Network. So they are actually going to door, camp to camp with their audiovisual communications. They are making their own, but they're also countering misinformation in a way. They're actually talking to the elders in each sub-camp and having their approvals and saying that, hey, either we can videotape you and we can distribute those, or please, if with your permission and blessing, we can distribute it. And then also they have these, again, underground network of women having conversations because the women are not accepted to be actually showing their face in audiovisual communication in public. But they have women influencers, what we have found. But then, of course, these are some of the things. I do not believe in COVID, but I believe in the God. I pray regularly, so COVID can't harm me, of course. Then our religious leaders assured me that COVID don't attack the Rohingya camp. So there are so many layers and levels of misinformation and disinformation which are there. But then one of the other things we saw is imagine this, our actually collaborators here, these amazing collaborators from IPSA, they were actually showing them, can you understand this? Can you understand this communication? Majority of the people said that, no, we cannot read these things because we don't know Burmese or you don't know, of course, English, but we can see the visual cues and we can understand what's going on. So, but, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars are being used, donor money or real money, to have these communication materials up there all over the Caribbean. So that's one of the interesting disconnections which is there. So some key inquiries, ideas, thoughts when I'm very much interested to look into this alternative information and internet ecosystem, how it's impacting, how it's actually also impacting the state building of Rohingyas. When it comes to Rohingya women, I'm seriously interested to inquire more about this digital resilience and connected other stuff. And the long-term development challenges, when you talk about it, can we actually transfer some of the understandings and findings from the Rohingyas to the other increasing displacement challenges that we are seeing around the world? And then, of course, how you combat misinformation, disinformation, when you are talking about huge mistrust between communities and low connectivity. And some of you already saw my several talks before, and whenever I talk about this amazing community, resilient community, I end up with this image. This is my most favorite image until now. We took it when we were actually driving through one of the camp areas. 2 Rohingya girls running. In the background, you see barren lands with makeshift huts and so many other things. What I really would like to believe in my, self-appointed, foolish academic mind is they're running from the desperations, the disparities, inequalities, and running towards a better future where they have hope. That's it for now. Thank you so much.
So much in there. Thank you so much. Boy, it's amazing to me to see how much has developed already in the course of 2-3 years. And I suppose that is a credit to the human imagination and spirit to find ways in the most dire of circumstances to create hope and to look forward to the future. But I would like to invite our audience to ask questions. Alexander, are you on screen because you have your hand up? Yes, please, go ahead.
Well, yes, thank you very much, Fahem. This was really firsthand and very, very illuminative, and yes, to hear. I wanted to confirm and perhaps then also a question regarding, you said the fact that Rohingya people do not have their language, what would you call this, made into an alphabet, you say, scripturalized. I want to say that I had in my research field a similar project, and I want to confirm how serious an issue this is. I study on West Coast India, and there is a very small language called Konkani, and I just want to share that the fact that Konkani was not made into a script became a major issue then for when this little state would become statehood, and the people were really, really out in the streets fighting for it. The issue I want to ask about is when it was then kind of decided or undertaken to make it into a scripture, into a scripturalization, I don't know how to say that, then came up different ethnic groups would fight over, should it be this scripture or that scripture? Would it be the Konkani that is spoken by the high castes or by the lower ones? And it became again an issue which I think is not resolved ever. And many of the, if I may add that, many of the local people then kind of decided and said, let's rather fight for English. Yeah.
So yeah, and it has been the struggle because first what happened was what I would say the absence of coherent leadership and the disconnections between the Rohingyas who were in Myanmar and who are based in some of the Western countries. I see definitely a huge disconnection between these two groups and the leaderships. And then the other things, now the contenders are the Arabic scripts, the Latin ones, then the Bahasa, and so many others, and they are yet to decide on what to do. There are several contenders and there are several formats I have seen, but still, yeah, it's really hurting them. So what we are seeing, if you remember, I was talking about local content. Some of the social media influencers, and which is fascinating, right? They are also having social media influencers right now from the camp, and they are kind of using English to have communication, but that kind of miss out on so many other stories. But yeah, I hear you.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, the issue also becomes, if I may add, that one with the university there in the Goa region, university would not want to allow students to, for example, even write parts of their MA thesis or PhD thesis in their local language, and that fight is also now going on with the university system in India, I may add.
Right. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Other questions?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please. Actually, I have 3 questions.
Oh,
It's mind-blowing subject, and if I just briefly. So first of all, how is you touched really on the issue when you said like the education and what is the visibility of education for them into Bangladesh? Are they getting back into their own country, or so for them, from their perspective, is there a light at the end of the tunnel that they can see out of either researches as this one or interventions from practitioners? So if you want to touch on those, please. I will come to the other question.
Okay. I'm not sure what you have against me personally. Why are you asking me these complex questions? Yes, but what I'm saying is there is a huge disconnection between different groups, and they have this, and it's not uncommon, unfortunately. There is a disconnection between the formal leadership and the people. So when it comes to education, when it comes to state building, nation building, there is a huge issue there. Now, when it comes to this kind of research and how it impacts other practitioners, this is where the thing is like how you ensure agency. You are in a compromised situation. Rohingyas are officially recognized as FDMNs, which is forcefully displaced Myanmar nationals. They are not officially, majority of them in Bangladesh are not officially recognized as refugees, but at least they are there. Like, for example, India, in India, Rohingyas are heavily persecuted and being pushed to Myanmar border. So what happens here is, this is the difference between, that like enemy combatants and the prisoner of war, you have certain rights and you do not have certain rights. So when you do not have agency, of course, there is a disconnection and misgivings on how you want to do things in a way. But increasingly what really helps me to be hopeful is the young Rohingyas are upcoming and they're trying to reach out, having their own thing and interacting with the people who are working in these areas and push, and not just male, also like male, female, both Rohingyas are coming. I'm not sure whether that answers your question, but that's the reply I have.
So maybe we can come back to
Sure.
more of your questions later, but there's another one online from Jim Rush. Jim, if you would like to go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you for your very compelling talk. Appreciate it very much. I'm wondering if you can very briefly give us the landscape of NGOs and agencies who are busy in this refugee camp and kind of the nature of their contributions and their relationship to the government of Bangladesh.
So thank you so much for asking this, because I think it's very important when we talk about any displacement or any displaced communities or any conflict. It's very important to also think about the struggles and ideas and issues of host communities. In many cases, it's kind of ignored. And when it comes to countries like Bangladesh, it's a very fast moving economy, but at the same time, Bangladesh has its own struggles. So then how you actually deal with this huge population that overnight showed up in your door. So that has been a case. But two things actually happened in favor of this humanitarian crisis to address it. One, we kind of talk about it. The other, we do not. The thing that we do not talk about is the role of Bangladesh Army. Bangladesh Army is one of the, if not the biggest peacekeeping force of UN. And they have huge experience of dealing with conflict resolution in sub-Saharan Africa, in some part of Asia and other places for years. So when this thing happened, they came in. And it was very interesting to see, because first the Rohingyas see the armies and they are freaking out. They were like escaping, doing, not trusting, not talking at all. But then eventually they understood that these are not the armies where we shoot them. So there's a trauma, there's a PTSD involved in the mistrust. So army really helped to actually settle them in, have the interaction, and also protected them from initial exploitations from many quarters. When you are coming in, of course, you do not have lands and how you do this. So that's there. Then the NGOs, Bangladesh has home of NGOs, like hundreds of thousands of NGOs are there. You have the biggest NGO, BRAC is there, Grameen Bank is there, and so many others. So we have been seeing, I'm originally from Bangladesh, so we have been seeing that they were kind of ready to actually go in and work on this. So these are the things from Bangladesh side. But when it comes to the other agencies, of course, they are there, but I'm not, these things are being recorded, so I won't be able to be as candid as possible. But the thing is, it's a fascinating, remember I talked about the coastal area and the hotels and the tourism and whatnot? This is the only refugee crisis in the world with so many 5-star and 6-star hotels. So go figure whether or not it would be an interesting destination for the people. And as long as the problem is there, of course, the demand for the solution of the problem will be there. Let's leave it that way. And maybe we can talk more over coffee.
Thank you.
Yasmin, I see that your hand is up.
Yeah, I had it, but I think Faheem actually addressed a lot of those issues. I was precisely thinking about the role of the Bangladesh Army because it has played a very important role in peacekeeping worldwide. And I have always been fascinated that that's not very clearly studied about or theorized by people who study Bangladesh. So you already addressed that question, and you also talked about the other groups, NGOs and others working. But just because we are having this conversation, I want to ask you a little about these women that you're talking who are doing these repair shops and beyond the so-called garment maker thing that we have about Bangladeshi women. How do these women think, it's long term, the previous question about the tunnel, end of the, light the end of the tunnel. Bangladesh will not recognize as refugees. You already have the displaced Bihari community, the stateless community in Bangladesh. Bangladesh seems to be squeezed in many ways, taking care of humanitarian issues. I'm just thinking, where do we fit in all these discourses for a larger understanding of the post-colonial state or the post-colonial state in a way, the post-71, about Bangladesh's role in South Asia as becoming the women empowerment and humanitarian kind of manager?
I think it would be a fascinating PhD topic for anybody up for grabs, and we can co-advise that person. The thing is, interestingly, I will try to address the women's empowerment issue first, and then go to the bigger macro level policy issues a bit later if we have time. So women's empowerment wise, Yasmin, I can tell you, it's fascinating to see the changes on the communication and the mobilization of Rohingya women since I have seen them escaping in 2017. They just escaped the violence and everything. And then 2021 when I was there. And some of the changes, and these are gradual, and this is not like, hunky-dory change. Like there are so much struggle because you see, all of us who are external in the camps, we are actually required to get out of the camps after 3 p.m. And then there is another world, completely another world in the camps. We're not allowed to be there. And there is a parallel government or governments and different roles and ideas. Majority of them are against the agencies of women. Unfortunately, one of the most strong, like the strong force for pro-women's empowerment, that guy was assassinated 4 days after I left the camp. And Mohibullah was a good friend. And he was amazing. I met him several times, had the opportunity to see the vision of a person. So that's a conversation for later part. But the thing is, what happens is, but what we saw when the Rohingya women first came, there was this internal struggle of, they see the Bangladeshi women, look same, kind of talk same, Muslims, but they're out there. And one of the game changers for Bangladeshi like development has been women are out there working, and in the governments, in the NGO sectors, in education sector, and so many other places. So that was a struggle for them. But when they saw the economic sense of it, when I say they, I'm meaning the patriarchy, the clergies, and they kind of opened it up. And we had very many in-depth conversations, and eventually they do not want to express that officially, but unofficially, yeah, women can work. So that really helped to have a better mobilization. Long way to go, definitely long way to go. But still, I think now what we need is systematic education or systematic way of skill building. What is needed for them? Because also there are certain things where they're sick of the education being provided to them. They want something that's really, really coming handy. Now, when it comes to the host, Bangladesh as an emerging economy and how it's posing itself, I actually do not have the answer. But when I can, let me ask this question, let me share a question that I also ask myself, why Bangladesh behaved the way it did when they opened up the border for the Rohingyas, because it was not natural, because they are going to come, it's going to be the thing, these kind of problems never solved, they will be there for 20, 30, 40, forever, 40 years or forever. Because we, Yasmin, of course you know that in 71, a big part of our population were displaced in our struggle of independence. My parents were IDPs, and they had to flee the genocides by the Pakistani army. So I think that psyche was there, definitely in place when the Rohingyas were fleeing. Imagine the first image that I showed, that they're fleeing the persecution. I'm like, oh my goodness, we can definitely relate to these things. But now, as the things are going on, there's been heavily affected in the border areas, education system and others, because of this overburden of the refugees. And unless, and this is a place where, of course, Bangladesh has been pressurized, because China wants the problem to be there. Both for China, both Bangladesh and Myanmar are client states. So then how you do this? Then, of course, you have India and their regional aspirations. So none of them are actually working towards a humanitarian solution. And hence, Bangladesh is left with them and Rohingyas are in limbo. So I'm sorry, Yasmin, there is no solution, but we definitely can have longer conversation in the later period on this.
Other questions? Please raise your hand and let us know you'd like to speak. In the meantime, let me just ask a couple of very quick factual questions. What is the COVID rate? One thing, and does the Bangladeshi Army continue to have an influence in the camp? Because I'm reminded of camps on the Thai-Cambodian border that were similarly ruled by others, and the Thai army just simply could not enter it. And so it became a very strong network of forces that reached far beyond the camps, in fact.
Very insightful question. So I'll start with the army one.
Yeah.
So the Bangladeshi army is not managing that overtly anymore. It's being handed over to the civilian administration. They were always under civilian administration.
Right.
So that's the difference between our army and some of our neighbors' army. So, so the civilian administration has been there, but right now they have special police battalions working, like the Bangladeshi police battalions, working in sync with the Rohingyas, the network of Rohingya volunteers, to manage the camps. And as I said, after dark, there's another parallel government that works there. But army is not overly present. There are no army camps. But what happened in the last 5 years, that officially Bangladesh actually have now stronger, and I'm not a defense expert, but what I'm seeing, Bangladesh now have stronger presence in terms of armed presence in that region. We have our biggest army base there. Now we are also have Air Force base, there's a submarine base, things like that. So it's like we are there because there's a huge issue. And one of the other things, eventually, it's a ticking time bomb in terms of the ethnic proportion. Rohingyas are now majority in that part of Bangladesh. They are now 60 or 70% or more. And because it was a very sparsely populated like area. So that is definitely going to create issues in the future. So, and the first one was.
What's the COVID rate?
So COVID is non-existent. Nobody believes in COVID. So that's the thing. But we were so worried that it would be a disaster, especially with the Delta variant and whatnot. It didn't. It didn't. It's there had been some deaths, but definitely not at all alarming.
Oh, that's good. Please.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
How about the authoritarian government in Myanmar now? So they were really, that's what I guess in the development of freedom, Amartya Sen did, but the famine happens in, like dictatorship. Some countries were authoritarian, but never happens in democracy. So the same thing, this genocide or ethnic cleansing. So this happens like mostly like in countries in transition, like we saw in Bosnia, Yugoslavia. We saw, of course, in Rwanda. So is there any hope that for the Rohingyas to go back, let's say if it's down the road, if you have like, country becomes a democracy, the Myanmar. And I was really disappointed because of the Nobel laureate, the former, I forget her name, she just really sided with the military. And, it was really a big disappointment. So is there any hope for them just maybe they would just go back eventually, not have like a Palestinian refugee be living in a camp indefinitely?
Statistically, none of this refugee crisis has ever been solved. All of these are actually at least 20, 30, 40 years of settlements, this size of settlements. None of them has ever been solved yet, right? We can hope. First, start with the positive ones. This is the very first time the main Myanmar so-called democratic forces, I'm calling so-called because I'm so disappointed with them, but let's put it aside for now. They have recognized Rohingyas and saying that, recognized in a way that, if we are in power, we are going to make sure that you are fully citizens, you are not others, you are not subhumans, we're not going to lynch you, you can come back to your own place with full citizenship. Because in Myanmar, you have tiered citizenship as well, right? But you have full citizenship and that's it. They are now recognizing right after the coup d'etat that happened. But what happened before? They had the agenda for 10 years. It was not just, because the army has been there forever. It's when we say about democratic or non-democratic, unfortunately for Myanmar, army has been there forever. When you have in a parliament 25% of the representation of the army, how can you make it a democratic country? And unfortunately, LDP, or I think that's the name of the thing, they let down and they had the opportunity. But systematically, the Rohingyas were purged from their main conversations and whatnot. So that distrust has been there. So I am hopeful because at least now there is an official recognition, but we'll see. I don't know. Because the record is not that hopeful at all. The record is not that bright at all. We have seen time and again that these, and not just Rohingya, the struggles are now, if you change with the Shan, the Karens, the Cheens, and so many other challenges are there. It's just this blew out of proportion.
Well, it did. So did many other things. And I think Myanmar's challenge is to find a future that has a federal vision that is multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and has a federal system. And I think the role of the army has been for decades to bring that, sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. So I think that is on the part of militarism, the reality of that. Just as a side comment, sorry to interrupt. So any last questions? We're just about out of time. And we certainly want to thank our speaker. Thank you so much. That was such a very rich presentation, Professor Hussain. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And I just wanted to say that feel free to reach out to me. I would love to have conversations over coffee, socially distant Zoom conversations, or to explore further. I have data, I have connections, and I have ideas, and I would love to hear yours and see what we can do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us today. We're happy that our hybrid format seems to work. Thank you, Chan Nguyen, for bringing all your perfect management to that. I appreciate all of you being here today. And thank you so much.
Thank you.